Hello there, and welcome to Defense Against the Dark Arts. I am Squire Callahan Ridgeborn, almost a Battlemaster, always a wizard, and tonight I'm here to talk to you about how to defend against magic in Amtgard, and I promise I'm not secretly evil. Before we get too into defending against magic, first we need to understand the syntax of how spells work, what spells are trying to tell us, right? So, if any of you remember all the way back to like 2nd and 3rd grade when we were diagramming sentences, we can diagram spells. And spells have particular parts to them that we're going to identify. So, a spell has a target. Now, there are multiple types of targeting. There's targeting players, there's targeting equipment, there's implied targeting of yourself. There is a school. Somewhere in the spell, the school will be revealed. And then finally, there's the effect. Spells will tell you what the effect is. Okay? And I have some examples of this. So my first example is Heat Weapon. Heat Weapon is cast by saying, Octavian, I call upon flame to heat that short sword, I call upon flame to heat that short sword, I call upon flame to heat that short sword. Inside of that spell, we have a bunch of different things. So first, we have the target, which is the player's short sword. Okay? I've targeted their short sword. It says short sword in the spell. It's been recently ruled that you can just say sword. If they have only one sword, you don't have to specify which sword. If they're playing flow, you have to specify left or right or what have you. Now, I call upon flame. So the school of Heat Weapon is Flame School. It says flame in the spell itself. And then the effect, heat that short sword. It sounds exactly like what you're going to have there. The sword is unwieldable for 30 seconds. Mend. I make this item whole again. So, Mend also has a target. The target of Mend is the item that you are touching. Now, strictly speaking, you don't have to be touching the actual item. You can be touching the player that is holding the item, but the item that you are specifically referencing here, you understand it and the receiver understands it. The school is a little trickier here because it's I make. So anything that is an I statement in Amtgard is going to be sorcery. And so if you really deep dive the spells, you can get used to like my power and I make and things like that are sorcery school. And the effect is, of course, whole again. The item is repaired. It's restored to whatever it used to be. And that is the syntax of Mend. Let's look at Icy Blast. So Icy Blast. The target here is going to be a player's name. You're going to target whoever that player is, Haj, my power makes thee frozen, my power makes thee frozen, my power makes thee frozen. Well, my power, again, signals sorcery because it's referencing something that I have. It's not referencing an external power. And the effect here is that Haj becomes frozen. It's in the spell itself. We'll give a couple more examples here. So Lightning Bolt, Flame Storms is mine to evoke. So in Lightning Bolt, and all spell balls really, there is an implied target. The spell ball I'm holding is the target. The spell ball that I'm carrying here in my hand. Not the one that's back here in my backpack, but the one that I'm holding. Now, fun fact about spell balls, you actually don't have to be holding the spell ball at the start of the incant, only at the end. So if you are running away from someone, for example, and you're playing wizard and you see your Sphere of Annihilation on the ground over there, you can start ambulant casting your Sphere of Annihilation as long as you pick it up before the end of the spell. That's valid. You've done it successfully. Now, for Lightning Bolt specifically, the school is flame. It's in the name, in the spell itself. Flame of Storms, lightning, is mine to evoke. Evoke always is going to be a spell ball effect because you've summoned that spell ball and now you can throw it at someone. Shove is a great example. I love Shove. You can target anybody with this. Mana, my power shoves thee, my power shoves thee, my power shoves thee. And so your target is, again, the player's name. You can target yourself. So if I'm just like, my power shoves thee, my power shoves thee, my power shoves thee. Well, I am the implied target. So I am shoved. Where am I shoved? Well, wherever I feel like it. So the school is, again, it's going to be referencing my power. So it's sorcery school. And the effect shoves thee. It seems pretty obvious that you are moving a distance. Even if you've never heard the spell before, you understand intrinsically what shove is doing is moving you somewhere. Pyrotechnics is a great wizard spell. It has a fairly long incant, but it gives us a lot of data. So if we are going to target a monk, and I say, Pole monk, I call upon the element of flame to destroy thy belongings, I call upon the element of flame to destroy thy belongings, I call upon the element of flame to destroy thy belongings, well, now all of their things are broken, right? And that it's told us in the spell. The school is flame because it's the element of flame, and the effect is destroy thy belongings. It can't be more simple than that. So, now that we understand the syntax of spells, we understand how to listen to spells and hear what they're communicating to us, let's get into how we can start responding to them. So first, I'm going to tell you what the state does, and then I'm going to tell you how, as a player, you should respond to that state. So first is curse. If you are cursed, this is not a big problem, because one of two things has probably happened. Either you are cursed while you're alive, or you're cursed while you're dead. If you're cursed while you're dead, and you're not in a place where a paladin can get to you to resurrect you, that's no big deal. You're just going to go back to your respawn, and you're going to respawn. If you're alive and you're cursed, you can get greater released out of this if that's something you need. You can try to go be near a healer so that you're in range to get that greater release when you die. There's not a ton of downside to going and respawning in our game, so I just generally will immediately go to respawn if I die and I'm cursed. Being fragile, on the other hand, means that you will die to your next wound. When you're fragile, there are a couple of things you're going to want to do. The biggest, most important thing is avoid taking damage. Don't get wounded, because if you get wounded, you're dead. It's super easy to find a release, so you just run around saying, I need a release, and someone will say, I got you, and then they'll release you, and you're good to go. If you're wearing armor, fragile is even less of a problem. You just got to make sure to remember that if you are fragile and any part of your armor gets broken, you could die. So keep an eye out for that as well. Now, stopped is where we start getting into the more difficult to deal with states. So when you're stopped, you cannot move your feet. So the problem with this is any movement ability that would force you to move or allow you to move fails when you use it. So you can't blink, you can't teleport, awe will fail. So when you are stopped, you're going to want to try to keep people outside of your blind spot, right? You've got blind spots back here. I can't see my hand right now. People are going to try to circle you and stab you in the back. You're going to want to try to prevent flanking. Being stopped is not a big deal if you have good positioning. If you are on the line with a bunch of your friends, or if you're near a bunch of people with shields, and it's less of an issue to be stopped than if you are, say, a foot further than all of those people. If you are in the lead and there's no one next to you to prevent that flanking, you can get swarmed really badly. So try to avoid being stopped in unadvantageous positions. Now, being frozen, you can't move your body at all. The way you respond to frozen is by loudly yelling frozen regularly, right? Alternatively, if you are in a bad fielding position where yelling frozen is going to get you killed, just be quiet. Just don't say anything. Just slowly count to yourself and wait. And wait till you're not frozen anymore, and then yell not frozen and start whacking people on the back, because their line will sometimes move beyond you. I've seen it happen before where there'll be 3 or 4 people squared up with 3 or 4 people. Someone will get ice-balled, the other 2 people will die. That little line will push forward, and now this frozen player is behind the enemy line. They flanked for you. How convenient. So if you are in a spot where you can get released, get loud, get released. If you're in a spot where they might kill you, stay quiet, hope that they forget you're there. If you are forced to be insubstantial, there are a couple of things you can do. First, you could call for being released. You could yell, I'm insubstantial. The best thing to do usually is just to start recharging things. If you need to recharge something, start recharging it. Insubstantial is a effect that is difficult to put on a player if they're standing still. If they hit you with something like Lost that makes you return back to your base, or a banish or something like that, no big deal. Run back to your base as fast as possible, get out of that insub ability, and then get back. Or move very slowly while saying insubstantial, returning to base, and hope that someone releases you real quick. A lot of times there is a healer or a bard or a wizard or somebody standing there that's got that release, and they're going to swift release you so that you can get out of that and get back on the field. Stunned. While stunned, you are unable to act in any manner. There is absolutely nothing you can do. You're just going to yell stunned a whole bunch of times. It's very similar to being frozen, except for anyone can kill you. So you're unlikely to get surprise flanking out of being stunned. You will either get released or dead, in my experience with stun. Suppressed. While you are suppressed, you may not cast or use any ability unless it's an EX ability. If you are a caster or even a martial and you're suppressed, you can either run away and get released, or you can just camp there and wait it out. You can run away and wait it out. There are a bunch of options there. If I am playing Wizard and I get hit with a break concentration suppresses me for 10 seconds, I'm just going to move back to 25 feet out, wait 5 more seconds, and then I'm back up. If it's a longer thing like a suppression bolt, I'm absolutely going to go and find a release to get me unsuppressed, because that's too long to wait. So let's talk about how you can reduce the effectiveness of casters that are wanting to do bad things to you. Range manipulation is a huge thing, okay? Most spells in our game have a range of 20 feet. Now, there's some notable exceptions to that. We're not going to get into it super much right now, but if you can stay 21 feet away from a caster, they cannot cast a spell at you. If you are on a line and a caster targets you and they're starting to cast a spell, if you just back up 5 feet, a lot of times they're going to stop casting their spell. Now, this is something that I see a lot of times on like Kingdom Fields even. Really good players will hear that someone's casting Shove on them, and they are going to they're just going to start running backwards right away. Well, they are trying to wrongly get either out of range, or they're trying to preemptively get momentum so that their shove effect lasts less time. The ideal thing to do is back up just enough that the caster picks a new target, and then push back forward so that they have to come back to you and back to you, back and forth. If you fall back just 5 feet, most of the time a caster will pick a new target, assuming that you're going to be out of range. And so you can manipulate the range of their spell by just not being where they expect you to be. Countercasting. So when targeted by a caster, you can use your abilities to counter the spell. There are a ton of different things you can do. If you're playing Barbarian, you could Rage. If you're playing Assassin, you can Shadow Step. Use your intrinsic abilities, the things that allow you to get away from casters, to get away from casters. If you are really good, you can try to break concentration them. It is difficult to pull off a break con on a caster if you don't know who they are. If you're getting cast down, if you're at a bigger event like Keep or Bridge Wars or something, and they're targeting you, they're like, Wizard in green, my power shoves thee, my power shoves thee, my power, and you're like, Wizard in blue, I command thee suppressed. Well, that's rough. Now, meanwhile, if you're at your home park, and a rival wizard's casting at you, and they're like, my power shoves, and you're like, Octavian, I command thee suppressed. You can shut them down a lot easier. So that can work really well. Another thing you can do is just start casting any verbal at them. People naturally have an inclination to not interrupt people, and so if you start casting louder than them, sometimes they'll just stop to try to hear what you're casting at them. And if they do, then you finish your cast and you got them. Line of sight blocking. A caster must be able to see you to cast a spell at you. This is easier said than done. Hiding behind teammates almost never works, because they only have to be able to see any part of you, and not even your body, even your equipment or your garb would count. If you can hide behind terrain, alternatively, that's going to be a lot easier. Maybe there's some big trees or some of those inflatable terrain pieces like we have here in the Rising Winds. Hiding behind terrain breaks line of sight. Remember that the caster only has to see you at the end of their spell, so keep an eye out for that. If you can see them, they can see you. Now, forced movement. Casters cannot move their feet while casting spells. This is, of course, unless they're using Amulet, but battle mages get unlimited Amulet. There's a lot of Amulet floating around, but there's also a lot of not Amulet moving around. So if you can force them to shift their position at all, you can break the spell before it hits you, right? So if you've got a wizard casting Finger of Death at you, and they're like, hey, Callahan's viewer, I call upon death to smite thee, I call upon death to smite thee, I call upon death to smite thee. Hey, look, I'd be dead. But if I charge that wizard, and I'm running up on them, and I've got my sword out, and they like take a step back just to maintain range and try to block, their spell is broken. A free hand. So casting requires a free hand, and with the notable exception of a specific bard archetype, casting always requires a free hand. So if you can eliminate their free hand, you can cause their spell to fail. Now, this is easier said than done again, but if you have a bow or a throwy or something, or if they are standing there and they're like, I'm casting, and they've got their hand way forward, and you can just clip their hand with your sword, if their other hand is holding something, their spell is now broken and they can't keep that cast going. They either have to drop that item on the other hand, in which case, you probably are now close enough to just kill them, or they're going to lose that cast. So keep an eye out for overextension of hands when they're casting. Spare equipment takes so much magic. I was at Park recently, and I was playing Wizard, and I had 3 short swords and a dagger. And there was an Elemental Barrage Wizard on the other team, and the Elemental Barrage Wizard was trying to get me, and I legitimately knocked 4 spell balls out of the air with my equipment. Having extra equipment reduces the amount of problems that you'll have. Having spare equipment also can reduce the amount of mending and releasing that your team has to do. So if you are a pole fighter, for example, and people heat poles, people love to use heat weapon on pole arms. It's like the thing that people are told to do when they're low-level casters, right? So have 2 pole arms. There's literally no rule that says you can't have 2 pole arms. A lot of casters only buy 1 heat weapon. So if they heat your pole arm and you're like, all right, no problem, and you just reach back and grab another pole arm, well, now you've used up their spell. You've got another pole arm. Like, things are going smoothly for you. If you have, several short swords clipped to your belt and someone breaks one of your short swords with an arrow, well, hey, I can just draw my next one. I don't need to mend it. This is especially good for combat casters who are looking to maintain flow of fighting without having to stop and mend everything back up. It's also super duper effective for martials. If I'm playing barbarian and I have my longsword, I also have my short swords on my belts, because if my longsword gets hit with an arrow, I can just switch to the short sword immediately. I don't have to go to someone else and ask them, hey, could you fix my longsword, please? No, I just drop it, grab the next one, and move on. It's so much more efficient to change weapons rather than trying to find releases and mends. This has been an entry in the Amtgard Basics video talking about defense against magic. Please tune in next time to learn about the class basics. We're going to talk about how to select your class coming up as well. I'm really excited to be wrapping up this basic series soon. I will see you in the next video.